Howdy, hi, and hello everyone. Welcome to Noah's Nest. If you don't know what Noah's Nest is, first of all, hi, I'm Noah. I'll be your host. And in Noah's Nest, there are a couple things that I choose to do. I'll either talk about a topic that revolves around the fantasy idea, which could be any form of media. That could be movies, video games, TTRPGs, and kind of anything else that involves fantasy. Or I could do a teach you how to play with a different TTRPG that I have finally read after how many months that I need to read these fucking books. Or I'll just be lazy and do a couple different character creations. But today, I did not read another book yet. I'll get to it, I swear. But today is another topic. And today I will be talking about villains versus antagonists. Like, what is the real difference between each of them? This question kind of comes up often when I'm trying to write a story, or if any of you are trying to do a storytelling, or even game designing. We use the term villain and antagonist kind of interchangeably. But is it the same? Today I'm going to try and explore the key differences between the two narrative roles, how they can function in stories and TTRPGs, and how we can kind of use them effectively in our own storytelling. Understanding a distinction between those two roles can make it a lot easier for storytelling and making characters more engageable. Whether you're trying to write a story, a novel, or even designing a TTRPG campaign, or just trying to understand more about your favorite stories. Knowing how villains and antagonists work can help you appreciate the kind of complexity of a good storytelling. So, first, to understand the difference between the villain and antagonist, we first need to define them. A villain, a character with malicious intent who actively seeks to cause harm, chaos, or even suffering. They are typically driven by either greed, revenge, power, or even just cruelty. Next is the antagonist, where any character or force that opposes the protagonist. But they might not be necessarily evil or malicious. A villain is always an antagonist, but not every antagonist is a villain. This distinction is kind of important when trying to craft compelling narratives. Antagonists can be anything from a rival warrior, misguided authorities, or even natural disasters, where villains are more deliberate. Kind of think of malevolent forces working against the hero. An antagonist might simply have different goals than protagonists, which can create some tension and drama without needing to be outright villainy. Consider a well-meaning king who tries to stop an adventuring party because he believes their quest will ruin the kingdom. He's an obstacle, but not necessarily a villain. Understanding the distinction allows writers, GMs, and even myself to craft more diverse and engaging conflicts. So now let's go over each of the different villain and antagonist roles, I would say. Classic villains are those who delight in their own wickedness. They might have a clear and selfish motivations. Power, revenge, destruction, whatever. They mostly don't have any moral dilemmas with their own actions, and they have more of a dramatic, larger-than-life presence. Think of Sauron from Lord of the Rings, or Joker from Batman, or even Vecna from Dungeons and Dragons. These villains are satisfying to defeat because they represent a clear evil, making them perfect for a high-stakes conflict. Their stories are often about resisting corruption and standing against overwhelming darkness. The classic villain is designed to be oppressed without moral complications. Heroes do not hesitate to stop them. They are a great tool for stories that emphasize heroism and the battle between good and evil. However, too many one-dimensional villains can make a story predictable, which is why some antagonists are more compelling. Unlike villains, antagonists can be fully developed characters with understandable motivations. They might oppose the protagonist due to either conflicting ideologies, personal stakes, or even a duty, or even mortal ambiguity. These could be Javert from Les Miserables, or even Magneto from X-Men. Or you can even use different rival adventures in your TTRPGs. Antagonists are compelling because they challenge the protagonist in ways beyond physical conflict. They force the hero to reconsider their beliefs, morals, and approach to problem solving. A well-crafted antagonist makes the audience question whether they are truly wrong or they have a valid perspective. This complexity makes for richer storytelling, where the conflict is not just about who wins, but more about the underlying themes and messages of the story. Characters don't stay the same all the time. Sometimes a villain evolves into a mere antagonist, or an antagonist develops into a villain. Think of Darth Vader, a villain to an antagonist, who begins as a feared enforcer of evil, but later regains his humanity. Or even Walter White. He was an antagonist, but turned into a villain. He started with justifications, but kind of embraces villainy. This transformation adds depth to a character and keeps audiences engaged. It highlights the fluidity of mortality in storytelling. The best characters evolve over time, influenced by their choices and circumstances. Watching a character shift from one role to another can be one of the most compelling aspects of a story, keeping audiences interested in their journey. Now, in TTRPGs, villains and antagonists serve different roles. Villains, they're the great for clear endgame threats. Evil overlords, dark gods, tyrants, main BBEG. While antagonists work well for moral dilemmas and rivalries. Maybe a noble fighting for their people, or a rival adventuring party. Some tips for some GMs could be using villains for straightforward heroes, and using antagonists for complex and maybe even player-driven stories. But if you want to blend the two, you can use that for dynamic storytelling. Consider giving your antagonist layers. Maybe the tyrant started with good intentions, or the rival adventurer had personal stakes to stopping the players. When done well, a moral complex antagonist can make players question their own character goals, motivations, and leading to more immersive storytelling. Some characters kind of blur the lines between villain and protagonist. Mainly the anti-hero. Protagonists with kind of questionable morals. Think of just mainly Deadpool. An anti-hero that kind of just does what he wants but stops the bad guys. Or you can think of an antagonist protagonist, the hero of the story who does villainous things. You could think of Light from Death Note, where, he's using the book for evil, but he's also using the book for his own enjoyment. These characters are fascinating because they challenge our own perception of right and wrong. They make us question what are truly considered good or evil. Not every story needs a pure hero or villain. Sometimes the most interesting conflicts come from moral ambiguity. Ambiguity. I almost failed English, I'm getting there. Now, before I end this, I'll go over one last section that I got. Building memorable villains and antagonists. Whether you're writing a story or trying to run a game, some key tips to follow. For villains, make them powerful, evil, charismatic. Make sure you make your party want to hate them. For antagonists, give them motivations the audience might understand, like the rivals for your adventuring party. They're trying to beat you in the same thing, but they're not really bad. If you want to have both, villain and antagonist, develop their perspectives so they make them feel more real. Don't let them just be a rival that's just be like, fuck that guy sucks. Make them a rival that ends up doing something horrible, like steal the king's staff and ends up toppling down the towers and burning the fucking orphanage. I don't know. Make their perspectives and goals distinct. And that's all I got. Thank you all for listening to Noah's Nest. I really like doing these. I really do. If you like this episode and want to hear more, check out the rest of our stuff from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everything else that you might hear. If you want to check us out on our social medias, we got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, maybe. Supposedly closing on the 5th. I don't know at this point. I'm doing this ahead of time. All at Creatures and Cantrips or Creature Cantrip. We also have a Buymeacoffee or Patreon if you want to support us in that way, but you don't have to. You could share, like, comment, rating us 5 stars. Everything helps us immensely. Bringing you all more in to our happy community really helps us grow and gets butterflies in my stomach. Makes me all giggly inside. But anyway, thank you all for listening. And the very last thing I'll say is see you, love you, miss you. Goodbye, guys.